Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Stephanie Mines, and I'm here with my dear friend and colleague, Dr. Cherionna Menzam-Sills, and we are facilitators in the Mother of Medicine series that has quite a scope that I want to share with you. So I'm going to read a bit from an overview about the Mother of Medicine, so that you can be aware of the opportunities waiting for you when you join our Trailblazer series and then our summit in November. So what we intend to do in the Mother of Medicine is it's quite revolutionary and is a major paradigm shift in healthcare. We want to educate broadly about the importance, the developmental significance of pre and perinatal experience. This has been largely neglected in allopathy and, in fact, in all related medical fields. We want to change that with women at the helm. We want to awaken original brilliance, which is a term that I've coined, and this is a major topic for our conversation today between Cherionna and I. What is original brilliance? And independently of me, Cherionna has come up with her own understanding that correlates with that about original embryological potential. So that's the meat of today's conversation. We want to awaken that original brilliance, that original embryological potential in everyone who participates in our programs. We want also to support and emphasize women's leadership in healthcare. That's a dominant theme for all of these programs. We want to communicate about the power of the healing that comes and the resolution of trauma and shock that comes from all these emphases that I've just described. So with that introduction to the upcoming programs that we look forward to seeing you in, the Trailblazer series, that is a forecast of the summit. The Trailblazer is May 12th through the 16th online. All these programs are online. The Trailblazer series is completely free. And then the summit, November 7th through the 9th, which is the deep dive into the topics that Cherionna and I are going to preview right now. So I'd like to initially turn this over now to my dear friend, long-term friend, Cherionna Menzam-Sills, to talk about original embryological potential.
Thank you, Stephanie. Such a delight to be here with you. We don't get to talk like this face to face very often because of the time differences. So thank you for making this possible. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to our conversation. I'm curious. And shall I just say a bit about original embryological potential to start with?
Please, please.
So I think I need to say as a background that I've been, well, as you know, Stephanie, I've been very passionate about embryology since the early 90s when I started studying it then and studying it somatically through the body, which means I was experiencing things. And I learned various kinds of work that supported me in developing this concept that I call original embryological potential because I felt it, I feel it, experience it. And basically, it's talking about the incredible potential that we have as little embryos. And one, I think the easiest way for me to explain that, it's not limited to this, but I often talk about how, if you think about the sperm and the egg come together and life begins as a unicellular organism, the zygote. Okay? And from that relatively simple organism, these complex bodies develop. What's up with that? Like, how do we do that? That's a total miracle. That's incredible potential. If you think about it, none of us really knows how to do that. Scientists haven't figured it out yet. Personally, I hope they don't. I think it's meant to be mystery. But what I've experienced also is that we can access that kind of embryological potential at any point in our lives. And we see it in action all the time. For example, if you cut your finger, we've all cut our finger. And then I find it amazing to see how that finger heals. That's original embryological potential in action. It has the potential to form the whole, and we can draw on that for healing. So, just to briefly introduce it, um, in the field of trauma therapy and pre and perinatal therapy and all of that, which I've been very involved in, the emphasis tends to be on the trauma, the shock, and people love to dive into that. It's relatively easy to dive into that and get lost in it. I know I've done it. But there's incredible health, there's incredible potential and intelligence, and your word brilliance, that is also available. And I don't find it as helpful to just focus on the trauma, all the things that were difficult, without including the potential. So for every step along the way, we are meeting developmental milestones, just like we do after birth. Like, we learn how to crawl or sit and crawl and whatever. Those are milestones that we're all familiar with. But little ones in the womb are also going through milestones. And our ability to get through those has to do with our potential. And so we all have that. And where people have had challenges in one of those milestones or at any point along the way, it's easy to get stuck on that problem. But wherever there's an issue, there's also potential that we can tap into. So that's something I hold in working with people. And I'm curious how that compares to your original brilliance.
Well, I want to acknowledge, as you did, the beauty of us being together in this conversation. So to share with the audience, Cherionna and I met in this passionate pursuit of understanding exactly what we're talking about here today. So we studied side by side, we were exploring side by side, and we were committed to a somatic understanding of what Cherionna now calls original embryological potential and what I call original brilliance. But we live in different parts of the world now. Cherionna is in the UK, I'm in Hawaii, and so we haven't been in contact for a long time. So this is really our first opportunity to share the simultaneity of these discoveries that we've made and that we identify similarly, but not exactly the same. So like Cherionna, I have been completely motivated by the capacity for resilience and healing. And that motivation comes in part out of my own personal experience, but it also comes out of my clinical research. So a unique experience that I've had is that I've studied the energy medicine of embryogenesis as well. So I had the great gift of meeting a woman named Mary Eno Burmeister, who transmitted to me the art of compassion known as Jinshin, which I learned in Santa Rosa, California, when I was a single mother with my first child. And I discovered as I studied with her that this was the extraordinary meridians that I was learning about, and they form prenatally and they turn on resilience, but they get damaged or they experience significant difficulty when anything suboptimal occurs in prenatal life. And as current research makes available to everyone, environmental influences and other factors, stressors, anxieties that are, all of that is rapidly increasing. Those contribute to make prenatal life quite suboptimal for a majority of people. So what I found was that this system, coupled with my understanding of trauma and shock from my doctoral research and my studies with some of the preeminent theorists in that field, made a difference. So I did research with that, with autistic children, for instance, between the ages of 5 and 8. And these children were considered socially unacceptable in many ways. They couldn't interact, they couldn't take care of themselves. And so my research was to see if engaging with these extraordinary meridians through very subtle touch in a clinical trial that was, very carefully designed and, peer reviewed, et cetera. The children in this study overcame those obstacles. So children diagnosed with autism from a variety of factors. I later learned that many of them were the children of veterans. So they had been exposed to war shock, to combat shock that had been brought home. And so I wrote a book about that because that was significant. But these children gain the capacity to engage socially. They gained the capacity to take care of themselves, to have better personal hygiene on their own at their young ages. They were able to do very simple things like brush their teeth and tie their shoes and dress and go out into the world simply because of turning on these extraordinary meridian capacities that, of course, I discovered are innate in everyone. So that led me to the formulation of original brilliance. So my definition of original brilliance is our innate capacity to find within our somatic experience the willingness, the will, you might say, the energetic force to overcome whatever is inhibiting our optimal growth. And, we create compensations as we do that. We find alternate routes that are less than what would be optimal. But those alternate routes lead us to the manifestation of our beings. And what I do in my work is help people discover how they formed those compensatory mechanisms, and then how to reframe them vis-a-vis the present moment to update them. And that mechanism, or mechanisms usually, by which we found alternative routes to bring forward ourselves, our purpose, our innate health into the world, that's original brilliance. So I help people actually name what that original brilliance is. And it's, of course, different for each individual. It's not formulaic. But in that discovery, the person finds their sovereignty. They find their voice. And they identify with it rather than, as you said, and I agree with you completely, identifying with the trauma.
Yeah. That sounds it's very resonant with how I hold original embryological potential. Maybe I can offer a bit of background about it. We met in the early 90s, and I remember teaching my first embryology movement classes in your beautiful studio outside Boulder, and it was much easier for us to connect when we both lived in Boulder instead of thousands of miles away from each other. But here we are. So that came out of my passion, first of all, for pre and perinatal psychology. It seemed to me that if I was going to understand the psyche, the psychological development that happens prenatally, I had to understand how the body developed, because body and mind aren't separate, and little ones in the womb don't even necessarily have a brain, you know. They don't have the equivalent of what we tend to define as mind. They have a lot of awareness. They're extremely sentient, present little beings, big beings in little bodies. But they don't have the kind of consciousness that we have, like our verbal consciousness. They have a different kind of presence that we all also have. And so as I was studying embryology, I was just fascinated by how things seem to know how to develop from this into that and into this into that. Constant changes. But to me, being a prenate is a lot like being an adolescent. The body's constantly changing. And what's this? But the ones in the womb don't seem to be confused by that. They're just present with it. So my interest in working with prenatal and birth therapy actually led me to study more craniosacral therapy. I'd already been studying some, but it led me to craniosacral biodynamics and eventually to my dear husband, Menzam-Sills. So I'm also grateful for that. As he was the pioneer in bringing biodynamics outside of the field of osteopathy. And so there I encountered some concepts that actually come from osteopathy originally, like health with a capital H and intelligence with a capital I. And these are things that we experience when we're holding someone and we settle very deeply. We drop into a relative state of stillness and presence. And we sense this, I want to use your word, brilliance in ourselves and in the client, and this stillness. And often we experience it as light and energy. There's some kind of force, an intelligent force that knows what to do. So that became my usual way of perceiving things, actually. When I was with someone, I was orienting to that. I learned how to orient to that. And then I eventually found myself guided to study with Emily Conrad and Continuum. And Continuum is a kind of mindful movement practice. And Emily would describe Continuum as an inquiry into our fluid nature. And what I found is that I'd been teaching embodying embryology through a different somatic practice, BMC, body mind centering, where we would think about doing things and do them, really. And that was fascinating and fun. But when I got to Continuum, I realized it took us immediately into an embryonic state. And we often would feel like we were little embryos floating in a vast nutritive womb. And it was like offering a different context than what most of us had in the womb, which, like my womb, was very toxic. And being in this state was very different. So in Continuum, we use different kinds of breaths and sounds and movement. And we slow down, similar to in biodynamics. We drop into this relative, still, slow state where we become much more fluid. Our usual patterning that we use for everyday functioning and the density that happens in our tissues, which makes us less fluid and less resilient and more rigid, starts to dissolve. And along with it, the various ways that we've protected ourselves from conception on, maybe even before conception, those can start to dissolve. And then we come back to something else. And that's where I got the term original embryological potential. This is what I experienced. This is our original potential. This is what we're meant to express, right? We're designed to be the fluid brilliance that we are. And to be living that intelligence. And I think very similar to what I heard you saying, when we drop into that, our various psychological patterns can also drop away, and we can live our purpose with more clarity. We can be in relationship with more clarity. And very relevant to these times, we can be more resilient. So to me, that's our potential. And I don't think I've articulated it quite as beautifully as you have like a sentence that says this is original brilliance. I don't have a sentence to describe this potential because to me it's so experiential. It's hard to just put it into words. I can give examples. So
What I think is wonderful and delightful and fascinating, just given our history together, is that both of us personally experienced original brilliance or original embryological potential through somatic pathways that are different but parallel. And out of our enthusiasm, which I would say is connected to our original brilliance, we are both committed to sharing that with other people. So we feel a will, an impulse, an ignition to codify what we have experienced. So Cherionna has written several books. The most recent is The Prenatal Shadow. My book, The Secret of Resilience. Thank you.
I can't
We
resist.
both have the same publisher, Inner Traditions. And these books relay to those who really are our kin, our community, our family. These pathways to discovering the scintillating, vibrant commitment to life that we all invested ourselves completely in. So Cherionna knows, and I'm telling everyone now that I am the grandmother of a new little one who I was just with just a few hours ago. And through her, I am seeing the living embodiment of what we're talking about. So my doctoral research was very much in brain development. I'm just referencing what you were saying about the brain earlier, and particularly the development of the social engagement system. So my doctoral research was really with head injury. I was looking at the way in which the brain responded to head injury and how that affected the entire nervous system and every aspect of life. And through that, I was able to have a window into prenatal brain development and the social engagement system, in particular, the 12 cranial nerves specifically. And as I sit with and in awe of my little granddaughter, it's like seeing everything that I studied embodied. I literally, I mean, I am giving her treatment with the art of compassion that I learned that's beneficial for newborns, but I'm really just gazing at her. And what I'm gazing at is, and I'm going to have to move somewhat to do this, is she is still, she's not even a month old yet. So she's still in this reciprocal relationship with everything in her environment. She is a somatic being, and it is relational. She is in relationship to everything. And I know the brain development that has already occurred for her. I'm treating her cranium all the time to help her still decompress from what is designed to be the highly compressive birth journey. But in that decompression, there is fuller expression, fuller social engagement, because the cranial nerves inevitably get impinged through the journey when there's a vaginal birth. And of course, something else happens when there's other kinds of deliveries. We're not going to go into detail about that right now. But I am able to see how original brilliance is in that profundity of relationship. And to me, at this stage of my life, as someone who really was quite damaged early on in terms of relationship, that is the original brilliance I have reclaimed, is relational, is my ability to be in relationship with everything. And this was something that was squelched in me from the get-go, and I have reclaimed it. And so, like you, what I call original brilliance, what you call original embryological potential, is experience, is our life experience. It's not just theory. It's living wisdom that we both, as grandmothers and as elders, can transmit to the world. And what I have created the Mother of Medicine series for is for us to do that, for people to listen to the wise grandmothers who are the leaders for these times. So the Mother of Medicine is my original brilliance. And it's an original brilliance that I feel I share with you, with the other facilitators, Dr. Antonella Sansone, and then we have a whole group that is going to participate in both the Trailblazers and the Summit events, for the world to listen to us. This really hasn't happened very much, Cherionna. For the world to just listen to us, to listen what we, the wise grandmothers who are advocates for life, for potential, for resilience, can communicate as the way to respond to the affronts to life that we are in the midst of at this turning point for humanity.
Mm. Yeah, I love what you say. Oh, sorry.
No, you go ahead, please.
I love what you say about, well, all of that. And, it occurs to me that we grandmothers are relational. We want to be in relationship.
Yes.
And like everybody. And there was a time when grandmothers were revered.
Yes.
Indigenous cultures, they've been revered. And that's not what happens in our modern Western world, right? But relationship is key to life. And I go back to embryology again. It's part of our potential. The sperm and the egg come together through sending each other messages and receiving them. Life would not happen without relationship and without awareness. They're aware of each other. Without that, without responsiveness, there would be no conception. Okay. relational potential is there right at the very beginning. And we learn often how to cut that off. I can also give the example of myself. I was thinking how when I was studying a particular form of therapy, one of my teachers said to me, Cherionna, what do you do with your emotions? Where are they? It's like, um, they were I was not in relationship with my emotions. I had learned to dissociate because that was the only way I could cope with the extremely toxic, both chemically and in terms of dysfunctional family, to say the least. The environment around me was not something I could be fully in relationship with and survive. It would overwhelm me. So I learned how to be in relationship with it through a dissociative kind of fog. I cut myself off, and in the process cut myself off from relationship with a lot that was inside me. And that has completely changed, through the somatic work and through this work. I found myself, to sound very new agey. Yeah, I found myself. I found my emotions. I cry at the drop of a hat now, you know. it's it's like I watch a movie and I'm crying through the whole thing, um, because my heart is tender and I'm in relationship with it, just like the egg and the sperm. The embryo cannot survive without being directly connected with mom. And whatever she's experiencing, the little one in the womb is experiencing directly as their own. They're not able to differentiate and go, oh, that's mom's problem. I'm fine. They need someone else to tell them that. Something that I try to support new families in communicating to the little one. It's like something like, oh, mom is working through something right now, but it's not about you. You don't have to worry about it. I'm fine. Right? So the little one doesn't have to worry. Communicating to little ones because they're relational and they're aware. But, I wrote this book, The Prenatal Shadow, because it seems to me that little ones' awareness, their presence, is in the shadows. It's not something that we acknowledge as a culture, right? So if the little one in the womb they're not really quite human until they start to talk when they're 2 years old, right? Or at least not until they're born. So why would you bother talking to them and explaining to them what intervention you're about to do in their birth, for example? But just talking to them, being relational with them, can be so helpful so they don't have to be so shocked by what's going on. Or interventions can be avoided, like if a baby is in a breech position, for example, and the practitioners don't know how to deal with that, so they're planning a cesarean. Talking to the baby and explaining that they could turn around, often the baby will turn around. They're very relational. They're very receptive. That's part of our potential that we originally have, and it can be dampened. It's still there, but we can be kind of separated from it until we find it again, like you and I have. And how, I think we both support people in doing that. Part of how I do that in several different ways. But one piece that feels important to me is to be able to differentiate, help people to differentiate between past and present. Yeah, that was what it was like then. And now it's 2025, if I'm just asking someone, what's your current age today? They'll say, and they're in their stuff and they go, oh, and they're present, and they're the adult that they are and they're capable. And then they can be with whatever it was instead of being it, identifying with it. Right. So it's partly that. Um, and partly supporting people in these practices like biodynamics and continuum to be able to dissolve to be able to slow down. Embryos or little ones in the womb are also much slower than we are. I'm aware of how fast I'm talking right now because I'm excited. These are interesting ideas, right? But this would be much too fast for a little one, right? They live in a much slower state. And so I'm slowing down so I can be there. And then I start to feel, then I really feel my heart. Then I really feel the space between us. I feel the relationship. It's not just a concept. I can speed up and talk about it. But when I slow down, it's right here. It's tangible. Do you feel it? The energy of it, right? So I support people in slowing down and being present with whatever's there for them in present time. And some of that is through body work. Some of it is, some of it's through body work where I'm having hands-on, like in cranial work, and some of it is through body work, I guess you could call it movement work, like continuum, and some other ways. But finding the fluidity, finding the space, finding ways to have more presence, again, in present time. Pausing and being with what is, including in the body. It takes us directly into that original embryological potential. Takes me out of words.
Beautiful. So I think what Cherionna and I have to offer are pathways to original brilliance, original embryological potential. And in terms of what Cherionna was saying, there's similarity and there's also difference. So my experience, for instance, of babies and little ones, from the work that I've done from myself, from the thousands and thousands of people who I have helped guide into their early life, I've developed a template called the Rediscovery Journey, which is a very simple, grounded, non-hypnotic, in fact, I call it dehypnotizing, with the assumption that we're all already hypnotized. So coming more into present moment reality, how we can, in that present moment reality, without doing anything fancy or going anywhere, we can find our somatic cellular memory of our prenatal experience, and that memory, which is cellular, which is non-cognitive, which is purely somatic, will literally magnetize us to it. And it's a teacher. It's a leader in our own bodies that we can access pretty easily. I would say the thousands and thousands of people, I need to get a final number on that, who I've done this with, there's 99% success that no matter what their background, lawyers, engineers, businessmen, businesswomen, secretaries, healthcare providers, body workers, a vast spectrum of backgrounds and demographics, everybody has an experience of finding that memory or memories. And from that collation, that curation of all those experiences that I've had, I would say that prenatal life is not always slow. Sometimes it's very fast. My little new grandbaby, she's sometimes very fast, even in her little state. She's very fast in her responses. They're immediate. And they create this ripple effect that moves at high speed through her entire body. And every part of that movement, to me, who's watching her mesmerized, is communicating to me about her unique experience. So that's what I aim for in the rediscovery journeys I facilitate with people. What is your unique experience? It doesn't look like anything else. It doesn't have to be slow. It can be whatever it is. and really opening up the space for someone to have their own non-formulaic, non-influenced experience, to the best of my ability. It's pretty hard to do that, but to the best of my ability, of what their really unique experience was at some point in their early life. Not everybody has a prenatal experience that calls to them. Some people have an experience of sometime during precognitive life or even later. But whatever it is, it's fascinating. It's really fascinating because there's such an incredible diversity. No two experiences are alike. There's nothing, people aren't being led into something that everybody does together. It's really about what you experienced. That's the emphasis. And out of that, people are able to find what happened at certain instances that are holograms that reflect many instances that are really morphogenetic in their content, shaped their nervous system in a particular way, and how they compensated for it. Like you mentioned, your disassociation, this was part of your original brilliance, was that you did that. And then how you can take that compensation and update it, update your hard drive out of enormous self-love. The self-love that comes away, this is something I've experienced that has been very important for me, is an ability, it's still hard one. We're both, everybody, we're still evolving, right? We're still finding our embryological potential. But to celebrate the ways in which I am who I am, that is unlike anybody else, and being able to stand behind myself in that uniqueness and make a claim for it, have agency about it. That's really new to me as an 80-year-old, and is one of the reasons why I am so welcoming to the crones, the kuyas, the boobies, the babushkas, the elders, the grandmothers, who may be a bit shy, maybe a bit reserved, to come forward, because we are carrying wisdom. So what Cherionna and I offer is, we're on parallel paths. We always have been. But there's something, of course, unique. And Cherionna codifies that in her books. It's so interesting. I have a copy of your book here, but I don't have a copy of my book. I actually don't have any more copies of my book. The Secret of Resilience is my book that talks about how I discovered my own original brilliance, and then it also has embryological information and case studies of some of these people that I've spoken to you about, who I've led through this rediscovery journey. And Cherionna's book, The Prenatal Shadow, which is really a game changer in this field, I would say. It's a game changer because it calls on us to change what has been the status quo in terms of how we view prenatal life, birth, and the postpartum period, and to make these important subtle changes that will determine the future of humanity. So I think this is important, is that Cherionna and others in the Mother of Medicine, we're not just talking about these philosophical or scientific principles. We definitely talk about that. We're passionate about them. But there's also real practical guidance, like Cherionna was sharing, how mothers can talk to their babies. And, it's so simple, but it has been in shadow. I would say it's been in shadow, that mothers can say to their babies, prenatally or postnatally, I am so sorry, honey, but I am not doing so well right now. And therefore, I'm not attending to you properly. And I apologize for that. And I'm gonna take care of myself now. And I'm going to be back on track. But in the meanwhile, I'm going to call daddy, or I'm going to call my partner, or I'm going to call the next door neighbor, and I'm going to get some help here. I can't tell you actually the number of people I have guided through the rediscovery journey who have said, I wish my mother would just take care of herself. She's so distraught because babies know all that, right?
They feel it, they experience it.
They experience it. Yeah. So there's really practical information in both of our books, and most importantly, in the Mother of Medicine series. And there's going to be differences, but that's great because people will need different kinds of resources. So anything further you'd like to say? We're going to come to closure here in a moment, Cherionna.
Yeah, just one comment that I think, clearly you and I work differently and in very parallel ways. And I also see original embryological potential in some ways is the same for everybody. And as it is recovered, the uniqueness of each individual can express more fully. So I see it as support for us being who we are. And also just to say, as part of that relational nature that we are from the get-go, that includes support. Mothers need support. They need
Yeah.
layers of support. They say it takes a village, right?
Yeah.
The baby needs that support. The baby needs the mother to be supported.
Yes.
Okay. So that she can give the baby what they need.
Yes.
And the baby then can develop knowing what it is to have support. Many of us had to learn that many years later. It's a major aspect of the main way that I work with pre and perinatal material these days is through small womb surround process workshops, where how I see it, it's like offering an opportunity, a very relational opportunity within a small group to experience a different kind of context than what we had in the womb, where there really is support and presence and safety and all of that, all the things that we needed back then. So I just wanted to add that in. I don't think it's that as different as you might think from what you're doing, Stephanie. I think there are a lot of overlaps, and I'm in great appreciation of you and what you're doing. And viva the grandmothers!
It goes both ways completely. Cherionna and I know the incredible investment that it takes to write a book, to conduct these programs. And we have both made that investment out of our original brilliance, our original embryological potential, but we've also made it out of our love for humanity. These are our love letters to the world. And that humanity is at great risk right now. It's being undermined at every level of existence. Our Mother Earth is under attack. So we do this for personal transformation, but there is no personal transformation that does not reflect on global transformation. And so this is our activism. So we invite you to join the Mother of Medicine movement to partake of the wisdom streams that we carry along with our other presenters, all of whom are brilliant and unique in their own ways, but all on the same track. And I'm delighted that the Mother of Medicine vision that came to me allows me to have this conversation with my dear friend Cherionna, who I haven't seen in decades. So
Amazing.
it's amazing. Thank you everyone who is watching, because you've given us an opportunity to have this deep talk. And it's the beginning of many more. Thank you, Cherionna, so much for
Thank you.
everything you've done, your own personal healing,
Mm.
the place of wisdom as a grandmother that you are in right now, and may you flourish in that wisdom and in the grandmother love that you embody. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Stephanie. And the same blessings to you.
Thank you, everyone, and we look forward to seeing you at the Mother of Medicine Trailblazer, May 12th through the 16th, right after Mother's Day, and then the summit, the real deep dive, November 7th through the 9th.